Welcome back everybody to Charming Data, a channel for data visualization in Python. So I'm really excited about this week because we are going to cover the checklist. The checklist is a very common component used in interactive data visualizations. And today we're going to learn how to create this kind of web app or web page that allows you to control checklists and tie the checklist data into a pie chart. So you'll see, for example, how we can update the checklist and choose May, and then you'll see that the pie chart updates. If we choose June, the same thing, or we take out a month, it also updates the pie chart. You'll also see how we changed, you see the mouse is an arrow, a black arrow. We'll change that to a pointer. We'll also play around with the layout. You'll see how it's green around the checkbox and circle around here. So we'll see how to do that. And we'll also see how if we make this smaller, you can scroll on the y-axis. Oops. Let's do that again. Scroll on the axis so it's all in one row and it doesn't go into different rows. And lastly, we'll see how we can play around with the legend and add a few things into this pie chart. So this, in essence, comes from the Dash Plotly core components, and they have about 15 or 20 different components here, and we are going to go over each and every one component. We already started about 4 or 5 of them, so make sure to subscribe below and turn on your notifications, because every week we're going to go over a different component that you can learn how to do with Dash. If you don't know Dash, Dash is a great framework that allows you to create interactive data visualizations all in Python and upload your own web apps with it, or create your own web apps with it. The data we're going to look in today, we've used before as well. It's data from the Urban Park Ranger animal conditions in New York. So this talks about all the people that call in from New York about a different animal or various animals that they see in distress, so rangers can come and help them. And I chose this data because I wanted to raise awareness on animals, especially animals in the US. There are over 6 million animals annually that go into shelters, and about 1.5 million per year that are euthanized and killed. So if you're thinking about getting a pet, make sure you adopt them and don't buy them. And if you know how to create these beautiful charts with time and how to create even more sophisticated data visualizations, see if you can help other shelters and other animals that are in need. Okay. So let's go right into the code. Make sure to open the description below the video. I'll have a few links there, the links to the data, the links to Dash, and the link to the code, which is the most important thing, so you can follow along. All right, so the first thing you want to do is you want to import these libraries so you can start your Dash app, because without them, you cannot do anything. The first line of code, we're going to read this Excel sheet that we just saw into a pandas data frame. And then here between this red dashes and all the way down here, I'm just filtering the data. So here I'm taking out those rows that don't have where the number of animals, what am I doing here? Number of animals is bigger than 0. So I only want rows where there's more than 0 animals. If it's 0 animals, then I don't want to include it. Or if it's multiple, I don't want to include it because it's kind of unclean data. And here I'm just creating a column for month. So there's a time and date of initial call. This is a time that the call was made by a New York City person to a ranger. So we're just going to take out the month. We're going to use DT to take out the month. We're going to sort the values from January to February, and then we're just going to change it because in the Excel sheet it's by 0, 1, 2, 3. So we're going to just change these from numbers to month strings, January, February, all the way to December. And this column is going to be called month call made. And then I just changed the column name here from hashtag or number of animals to amount of animals. So it just looks better or reads better. This is how you start your Dash app. You should always have that. And then we're going to go into the layout. If you've seen videos before, you know all about the layout. This is what you need inside your Dash app to to specify what's going to go on the page itself. So as you can see here below, we have the div, the section of the page that's going to be our graph. Below you'll see it's going to be a pie chart, but here I'm actually giving it a placement. I'm giving it a placeholder where it's going to go. And above it, we're going to have the checklist. Well, the first thing we're going to do is a div, a section for the title. So you're going to see title above the checklist, as you saw here, the title. And then below, we're going to go in the middle, we're going to have the checklist. So this is to start the checklist, you do dcc.checklist method, and then you have all these parameters. Now, all these parameters, we're going to go over them in the next few minutes. They are actually here. These are the parameters. I mean, these are the documentation in Dash. In the properties, you'll see all these parameters that we're going to go over. So you can, by the end of this tutorial, you'll know each and every parameter, what they do, what they mean, and how you can then manipulate a checkbox or a checklist with other types of data and other types of graphs. All right, so let's get started. So first thing you want is the ID. The ID is very important because you're going to use it later to connect the data to a specific graph, in this case, the pie chart. Then you have the options. The options are the options that you give the user. So in this case, we know that the options are the 12 months that I want on there. So I'm going to do a list comprehension with a for loop, obviously. So for every X in the month call made, I'm going to do unique because there's many months that repeat themselves. So this is going to give me for 12 different X's from January to December. And then I'm going to create a dictionary for each one of them, because this is how you create an option inside your checklist. So the label, and then the value, and then you can disable it if you want. We are going to put false because we do not want to disable any month. These values are values chosen by default. So these values are, make this bigger, are values that are going to load as the page loads the first time, or whenever they refresh the page. This is what the user is going to see: January, July, December, and that's why if I refresh this page, you will see January, July, and December chosen. All right. Okay, so now we won't go, I'll go into this later. I just want to show you how all this is connected. So this is just the layout. We won't go into this later. So we created our values by default, and then we given them the options. Now you want to connect the information to the pie chart, because this is just a checklist. This doesn't mean anything. It's not connected to anything. It's just options. So in order to connect this, you have to go into the callback. The callback is where it ties all the data into a graph or into whatever you want. So in this case, what we're going to do, we are going to tie the input. We're going to say, give me from the component, my checklist, because that's the component ID, take the value. Take the value, and the value is, as you can remember, one of the months. Take one of those values, and then use that value to spit out a figure into the graph. Now the graph is the component ID is right here, and we're going to create a figure with in this graph, because one of the parameters of DCC graph is also figure, right? So right now it's empty, but we are going to create something in there with this function below, right? And that's why I put here figure in the output. All right. So since the input was the value of the checklist, we're going to in the function, the update graph function, there's only going to be one argument because there is one input, and that argument is going to refer to the component property in the inputs. It's going to refer to value. So options chosen, I called it option chosen. You can call it whatever you want. Is going to refer to this, and then whatever we do inside here to filter the data and create the pie chart, whatever we return is going to be returned into the figure property of the graph. All right, so it's going to be returned here, which is right under in the page layout, is right under the checklist. All right, so let's see what I'm returning. Let's see what this actually means. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here because I already did that with the video above, the bar chart video above, that talks about radio items, connecting radio items to a bar graph. So it explains a lot more detail. Here, I really want to focus on the checklist and every option that it gives you. But just so you know, what you could do here is, what we're doing here is we're creating a copy of the data frame. You always want to create a copy. And we're going to say, give me all those, filter the data frame. So the rows that belong to month called made are rows that have these options chosen. Now, what are these options? These options refer to this, which refers to this, which refers to this by default, and refers to this if they choose something else. So if they choose whatever April or December, you'll see that it's a list of April, December right here, and inside this list it's going to filter the data frame so only those rows with April and December show up. And then I'm going to print it just so you can see. I'm going to print this unique rows that actually showed up from the data frame because I want you to see that it actually works. So let's see, I'm going to open this up. And we have here January, July, December, but let's choose something else. Let's choose August and September and take December and January out. I'm going to choose again August, September. So right now you see August and August, September, because every time I clicked, I chose something. One last one, let's choose July, and you'll see how it chooses July, August, September. So this is printing out what I've chosen. You don't need this, it's just so you can visualize what you're actually choosing. Now you want to go into the pie chart. So now I have the filter data frame, I have what I want, and in the pie chart, I'm going to create these parameters. I'm only going to use 3 parameters. If you want to go into in depth how to use a pie chart and how to manipulate it with Plotly Express, then click on the video above on all about the pie chart, and you can learn all the 20 different parameters in the pie chart. But here we only have 3. We have the data frame because we don't need more than 3. We have the DFF, which is the new data frame. We have the values. The values are going to be the amount of animals because every slice is going to be sliced up according to the amount of animals. And together with the names, which is going to be this column, the month the call was made. So we only have, in this case, July, August, September. So from all the rows of July, August, September, we are going to see in the pie chart how many animals were called for each particular month. And that is why we see here that from July, August, September, these legend here, the blue August, 46% almost were of animals were called for in August, or all the calls made in August were for 46% of the animals compared to the July and calls made in September. And you also see the numbers. The amount of animals 90, 147. So here you have 201 animals were called by people to help them out. All right, so this is how we created the pie chart with the checkbox. Now let's go back into the other parameters of the checkbox. The other parameters of the checkbox refer to mainly the styling and the layout of the checkbox, and they include class name, all this, all the way down here. All right. The first 3 we're going to focus on are class name parameter, which refers to the container div, the input class name, which refers to the input checkbox element, the checkbox itself, and the label class name, which refers to the class of the label that wraps the checkbox. So, how do we manipulate these? What does this even mean? What does this even mean? This refers to classes that exist inside a CSS form inside your assets folder. So let's take a look at what that means, because it sounds like I'm speaking Chinese if I'm not showing you anything. So going to the checklist, this is where I have my checkbox Python code, and inside this checklist folder, inside I have assets. I have another folder called assets. And inside the assets folder, I have a checklist.css form. You can call it whatever you want. And here I have 3 different classes: my checkbox container, my box input, and my box label. And each one of these refers to a different section. Or you can refer to whatever you want, but I made it so my box container refers to the container, the container div, because you see on the class name, the string refers to that class. So here I put my box container. So Dash or your web app is automatically going to know that when you put this here, my box container, it's going to look for a class inside a checklist inside a CSS form inside your assets folder. So okay, so make sure that you put this in your assets folder, and now it reads display flex. And what this allows us to do is exactly this. When you make it smaller, this display flex means that this display of all this div, the div of that belongs, that wraps around all these checkboxes, not the green one, but the div, which is actually even bigger than that a little bit, it makes it still one row. So if you scroll this way, that way, it's all one row, and it doesn't, if we didn't have it, this will become 2 or 3 different rows. It'll just get smushed together. So this is what we created by using this class inside our CSS form. That's inside our assets folder. So input class name, obviously we talked about, refers to the checkbox element itself, the box itself. And we're going to use the class myBoxInput because that's what I call the class in the CSS form. So go into myBoxInput. Let's see what that means. And here we see that myBoxInput class refers to the cursor. So here we're going to say that the cursor is going to be a pointer. Pointer means that you see how the mouse is black arrow. If I get closer, it suddenly becomes a hand. Now, the cool thing about the CSS form that it updates automatically without you having to rerun the whole script. So if let's say I want to take this out and save it, now it's going to update within 2 seconds, and now you'll see that this does not change into a hand anymore, into a pointer. It stays as an arrow. So let's change that back because we definitely want it and save it. So the last class refers to the myBox label, refers to the label that wraps around the checkbox input. And myBox label is essentially this green part right here. It's technically it's empty, there's nothing, it's usually white, but we in the myBox label in the CSS form, this class, we made it so the background is green, the padding is going to be this size, this REMs, and the border radius is 0.5. And this actually refers to this little, you know how it curves in here? You see how it's not a complete box, but it goes up a little bit like this, and it's a little bit circular. That's because it's 0.5. If we change that, you'll see that it's suddenly a lot more curvy. Let's save that, and let's see what it gives us. You see a lot more circular. So it's kind of cool that you can just update the CSS form and it changes everything on the spot. Okay, so this is, now you've learned how to connect your CSS form classes to your checklist class name and input class name. Most Dash components have at least a class name. Some of them will have also this and or this. So now you can use them in other components as well. The last thing to learn is that you can either do it this way through a CSS form, or you can hashtag this out and just do it this way using style. So style refers to the style of the container. Same thing here. Input class name refers to the checkbox element, but it's a class. If I don't want to use a CSS form, I just check this out, hashtag this out, hashtag this back in, and now input style refers to the exact same thing, input checkbox element, but I'm just going to put it here inside a dictionary. So that's really the only difference. I'm using a dictionary here and I'm defining the styling inside my Python code instead of using a CSS form that is located inside an assets folder. So it's whatever you want to do. Usually if it's just a few things, a very short dictionary, you can do it inside your style and input style. But if it's longer, then you might want to use a CSS form, just like here, right? If I hashtag this out, this is and hashtag this in. Label style refers to exactly the same thing as a label class name. It refers to the label around the checkbox, that green part. But instead of using the CSS form, I'm just going to put everything here inside a dictionary to make that green shape and green color around the checkbox. Given that these are a few more keys and values here in a longer dictionary, maybe here you might as well, you're better off aesthetically using the CSS form. But in essence, these are exactly the same thing as what is above them. Okay, so we're going to just use the CSS form because that's a lot easier. I'll just have one form with all these changes. All right. This I'm not going to go over here. This is persistent and persistent type. It's actually a very important part to learn how to remember, to ask your app to remember information that the user changed on your graph. But I really go into detail into this in detail in the drop down video. So you can look above in the drop down video on the top right and just click on it. Go to minutes 16 and 20 seconds, and it'll talk to you all about the persistent and persistent type and the three different types that it has to remember information. Okay, so there you have it. We learned how to create a checkbox. We learned how to style the checkbox and how to tie it to a pie chart. Now you can tie it to different charts and play around with it. I hope you enjoyed. Before you go, or actually before we go into the practice session and we go into several challenges that I created for you so you can practice, hit the like button. I hope you subscribe below, because next week, again, we'll go over a different dash component right here. On the top right, we might go into the input or the link, and we'll also look into different things, so you can learn all about data visualization in Python. So the challenges I prepared for you guys are three different challenges. The easy one is to make the checkbox label or the green area more transparent. This is opacity is the hint that I'm going to give you to make it more transparent. And what does this mean? This means that we are going to create, you see how the opacity here is not as, it's a lot more transparent, this green part, than what it was before. This is what you need to accomplish with this challenge. If you do not know, I would recommend you try this on your own. If you don't know how to solve this, on the first comment under the video, I'm giving you the link to the GitHub so you can see all the solutions for these challenges. But I think you can do this. The second challenge is the medium challenge. You're going to disable the March month checkbox. And what does this look like? So this is what it looks like. You see how I can click on all the other months? But on on March, I cannot click because I disabled March. So these, as a hint, one of the parameters inside the checklist is to disable things. See how you can disable it, and you want to use it inside the dcc.checklist. All right, the last challenge is the hard one, is to use animal condition in your web app instead of month call made. What do I mean by that? So what I mean by the hard challenge is to create a checklist instead of month call made, create a checklist of the unique animal conditions. So you have 5 different conditions that come from the Excel sheet animal condition column. I chose healthy and injured by default in the values, and this is what is tied to the pie chart. So now you go ahead, try this on your own and see if it works out for you. Again, if you're not sure how to do it, try it on your own a little bit and then go into the solutions in the GitHub, and I'll show you exactly how I did this. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you'll have a good time trying to solve this, and make the best of it. Thank you.